So first today I'm going to be talking about the Anti-Sexism Manifesto, which was released by Socialist Alternative, which is an organization, a Marxist organization in Australia. Um, and just going through kind of its points, but also the document, like if you read it, like was a bit dated. Um, and just going through like the modern implications of the document and yeah. Um so I created this because I feel like something that's really relevant today is like the whole male loneliness epidemic and incels and um you know um I just want to say, like, just as a first disclaimer, that a lot of this is like very gender essentialist, and not all men are raised as men, and not all women are raised as women, and some don't even, fit into those boxes at all. And, gender is a construction that should be abolished, and we should feel free to express ourselves outside of the confines of gender. Um, but that being said, we are socialized based on the gender assigned to us and made to exhibit different behaviors based on that. Um, and I feel like there's a really common idea that men are also like super affected by sexism, but it doesn't compare to the way that women are affected by sexism, at least in any real way. While men do not benefit from upholding sexism as workers, um, they also have personal interests in upholding traditional gender roles, which keep them in charge in relationships. And um, yeah. And also with the male loneliness crisis, there's a common idea that it's only men who are affected by this loneliness crisis, which honestly doesn't even exist. Um, and it's really more a loneliness crisis created by capitalism, which isolates us from each other and turns relationships into things that are more transactional and confined within the traditional family unit. And um, beyond the binary, we are all isolated by this, not just men. And they're not uniquely susceptible to loneliness or anything because of that. We're all kind of taught in different ways to push down our emotions of um in favor because if we show emotion, it can kind of be pushed back against us because of the individualist ideas that we should contain our emotions um, to kind of show a barrier of um, to deflect from basically like the individualist responsibility for mental health and emotions um, and how we're not taught to show them just in general. And it's really a lot of it is crafted around men feeling upset about women gaining more independence from them, especially rooted from like feminist movements and different things like that. Um, especially what we would term today as incels, even though the origin of incels was actually created by a woman who kind of wanted to who wanted to find people with shared experiences of feeling isolated, and because she was a woman in her mid-20s who had never had sex. And she kind of created this website where she wrote articles about her struggles with feeling isolated related to this. And it became a spot for men and women to talk about their struggles. And now it's really been co-opted by men to blame their inability on sex on women gaining more independence and not being willing to get into relationships with men who downright dismiss them and are are in general not okay with being not as okay with being in a relationship with someone who views them as the root of society's problems. Um and especially um we've seen this as a justification for violence against women. And as socialists, we should recognize that the problem with male loneliness is not at all women. And I think that's something that's really important. And also, the male loneliness crisis is a myth. um, and as we see uh, women fighting against these traditional roles, many men feel the need to defend their position within the household, and defend their right not to contribute in relationships. And um, and as we understand it, men are working against their interests by attempting to uphold these roles because capitalism is the root of this issue. And the reason they are lonely is because capitalism, of course, isolates us from each other and pushes the responsibilities of maintaining relationships and all of these different responsibilities alongside the need to work long hours to survive. And there's simply not enough time to maintain relationships alongside this. Especially as, gathering places disappear, and our cities become more and more dependent on car infrastructure, which keeps us like physically apart from each other. Um, and as men become are committed to upholding these gender roles, that is a commitment to a personal interest rather than what we would see as their interests, predominantly as workers. Obviously, this applies to men within the working class. Um, and while there are certainly women still interested in this traditional dynamic, like we see with trad wives, it's a lot less popular than it used to be. Like especially now, like it's not just an assumption that men are providers and women will stay at home, although women were always a part of the working class, because it's really hard to with the way that capitalism works, it's like really hard to maintain a household um, on one salary when you don't have a lot of socialized things, and a lot of things fall more on the individual family unit. Um, and so when we see a lot of like these men claiming to feel like claiming that women are the root of these problems, it's something that we really need to work to dispel and understand that men are, while there definitely is like um there definitely is loneliness and things that we all experience, it's not something that is that is what's the word, excluded to exclusive to men. And then also I wanted to talk about more in depth about the reading, and I feel like something that was really important that you said was that changing our individual behaviors is not revolutionary. The personal is political, but we we cannot end sexism by changing our individual behaviors, and capitalism thrives off sexism and the nuclear family and all of these assumptions. And the answer to ending um to ending the oppression of women is revolution. And and that is fundamental to our beliefs. And the family and capitalism really go hand in hand, especially um because of the way that the family was constructed, starting with capitalism. And it used to be that child raising and things like that were more communal, and now it's more based in uh the home and like a mom and a dad, and they're supposed to raise the children. Um and I this photo is actually from the Russian Revolution, which actually in a lot of ways like started with this strike of women who were fed up with the conditions of capitalism, especially during World War One, where there were food shortages and lots of different things. And women came out on strike and compelled men into the streets, um, to basically saying like our interests are aligned and that we we need to work together to overthrow capitalism. And women have always been played a very central role in revolutionary movements, and we should understand women within our organization and um, within society at large as political actors, who can be play a critical part in revolutionary movements. And especially because sexism is prevalent, or has been at least prevalent in socialist organizations, because of the nature of society and sexism, um, especially during like the New Left period where women were um, dismissed from socialist organizations. It's important for us to make space for women to speak in the same um, uh, on the same on the equal basis as men. And despite the reality that sexism will exist as long as capitalism does, we can and should take actions to undo our socialization and try to change our individual behaviors. I think some things within the manifesto were really good, but I also think that a lot that it kind of was premised um on the repression of sexuality. And I think that we don't always have to like that doesn't mean we don't have to never show affection to our partner in public. After all, like women may desire this affection, but we should also be aware of the way that public displays of affection can be possessive and ways for men to kind of exert their dominance over women within relationships and be controlling. And that's not something that's necessarily exclusive to men either. There's a lot of abusive dynamics which don't include men, and in general, especially within abusive situations, those displays of affection are something that men use to show their dominance over the woman, within heterosexual relationships. Um, and especially within lesbian relationships, I thought the address of this was interesting because the lack of men is often like really confusing, and so many men will ask like who's the man in the relationship, and it's basically like aka like who has control in the relationship, who is in charge, who should I talk to, and while lesbian relationships can at time mirror that dynamic, um we shouldn't look for a man or a control in a relationship because partners should be considered as equal to each other. And yeah, so any comments like that, maybe don't make them. Yeah, so we should consider our partners as individuals with the ability to make their own decisions. Um, while men may predominantly be the ones exhibiting these controlling behaviors, they're not exclusive to that. And especially as we understand like sexual assault, consent is never guaranteed in long-term relationships, and I think that's also something really important to this. The way that we engage with our long-term partners, we should always be looking for consent, and we should also be looking for our partners um to enjoy sex and feel free to express their sexuality and interests. Um because I think that within this I felt a little bit weirded out by the the determination of safe sex, especially because um within gay and like queer communities, there's still a lot of fear around sex, and there was a lot of blame, especially around having safe sex within gay communities, during the AIDS crisis, where gay men, were, essentially victim blamed for contracting the disease, which people knew little to nothing about. Um, and I was actually having a conversation with my professor where he was saying that safe sex, a lot of times the way it's described, creates a lot of fear surrounding sex and sexuality, which makes us repress our our desires and and actually makes it a lot more difficult to have conversations surrounding sex without feeling like weirded out or whatever. And so I think that's something for us to be aware of, especially because the document addressed it that way. Um, and I think in general, we shouldn't be afraid of expressing our sexuality, but we should understand the implications that that expression has within political spaces. We shouldn't be talking about sex and sex with like within a political conversation. We shouldn't be coming on to our comrades, or making a lot of sexual remarks and things because that can actually alienate a lot of people from our discussions. And I think that's the biggest takeaway from this is that we want to make a space that is open, not just for women, but for everyone, people who are queer, and make them feel safe enough to express themselves politically in a way that doesn't um premise on sexualizing them or anything like that. So, yeah, that's it.